Welcome to another edition of Asian Founders and Funders, where we introduce the brightest minds and most interesting entrepreneurs and funders throughout Asia. I'm Marc Kramer, a serial entrepreneur and senior lecturer of entrepreneurship at Vinh University in Hanoi, Vietnam. Today's guest is Ho Zhi Hui, co-founder of Skilio, which helps college graduates in Asia get professional experiences in other countries. Welcome.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
So before we get started finding out more about your company and how you've built this business, why don't you tell us about your professional background and how you got to where you are?
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. So I'm Ho Zhi Hui from Skilio. And a little bit about me is I'm actually someone who's very passionate about education and people management. And that has been a passion that I figured out since I was in my high school. Yeah, so a little bit about why I'm in this field, right? Because to be very honest, I sucked at school, right? Academically, I wasn't that good. I didn't get like the best grades. I didn't see many A's in my report cards. I was a mediocre student, right, back in my high school. Despite that, right, I did get a lot of chances by my educators and the people in my school to actually serve, right, beyond the classroom. Right? I was involved in many different activities, like being an ambassador for different events, being able to plan my own community outreach event, being able to play my school's orchestra, being able to serve as a student leader, and all these different experiences outside of the classroom did actually help me to gain valuable skills that helped me define success in my own way. Yeah, so when I actually grew up, my growing up years, I was thinking, how then can I help other students, not just in Singapore, where I'm in right now, but in the region, to redefine how success is being measured, right? It's being defined. And I think that can help people to contribute in their own ways, to be able to value add to society in their own ways. And I think there's so much potential, right, that many people can bring to the table, which is why I thought, fresh out of college, fresh out of university, I was thinking, how can we help students do that? And yeah, I think my pursuits were revolved around that whole theme about how do we help people redefine success beyond traditional means. And yes, I think all my professional experiences and things that I've taken up helped me to do that. And I'm still learning along the way as well. Yes.
So tell us about some of your professional experiences, and then we'll go back to your company.
Sure. A little bit about some professional experience that I've been involved in, for example, like coaching and mentoring young people in the region. So I was a coach and mentor. I did actually get certified with various profiling tools, especially in the positive psychology space, one being the Strengths Finder tool. Right, and that also helped me to use this as a tool to help young people find out or get a head start to what they are good in, right, what their strengths were, and how they could align this to their passion when it comes to choosing a good career or even the first course in university. Right, and I also am actively involved in some of these different, I would say, educational hubs, youth organizations in Singapore to help students grow through some leadership training programs, leadership workshops, career development workshops, and I do that freelance as well. Yeah, so far all my professional experiences have revolved around coaching, mentoring, and I would say in general education in the non-academic space, and that for me has been very helpful to help students build like a more holistic educational journey throughout their growing up years.
So you grew up in Asia and you picked the Asian market to do this. What's the difference between Asian kids and how they're raised and educated and focused on professional opportunity compared to kids in the West?
Yes, a very interesting question. I think in Asia, in ASEAN, right, the students are actually very, I would say, outcome focused, right, when it comes to their educational journey or some of the different accolades that they have accumulated over the years, right? And even for myself, I've been actually been going through the whole educational system in Singapore. And what I realized is that there's a lot of focus on outcome in terms of, say, getting the right answers, right? Getting a good score in your examinations, or getting things right, at least the first time, as what is defined by the answer key. And that is something that I think we have been quite attuned and also conditioned to also practice, right, because of how the system is. And that also, I would say, awards us based on merit, right, when it comes to achieving certain grades or certain results on the report card. As compared to, say, in other regions, right, in general, what I realize is perhaps the students in ASEAN are slightly more risk averse. They are more afraid of failure, right? Because I would say there are safe spaces to make mistakes, but I think in terms of, say, how success is being defined, right, it is quite a slightly more narrow definition, right? And that also results in a lot of students being more averse to being open-minded to trying new things, right? And experimenting with new options that might come along in their educational journey, or being rather a little bit more myopic when it comes to making choices, or defining what success is to them, right? So I would say in ASEAN, a lot of students, I would say more students, they go through a more traditional root learning kind of system. And after they graduate, right, they also they bring this lesson forward, and a lot of people prefer to take a more conventional, traditional pathways. But I think that has been changing because there has been a lot of awareness on this. Yes, but I think there is still room for improvement and room for change as well.
One of the things I wonder if you work on is professionalism among these kids when they graduate, because I find that unlike in the West, when kids come to class, they are habitually 15 minutes late. Like, it's so unusual for somebody in the West to be late for class. You might have one, but I would say like a good chunk of the students come 10, 15 minutes after class is supposed to start, and you end up waiting for them. And I wonder why that is. At least I experienced that here in Vietnam. And how do you make sure you get them? Because I know the big companies in Vietnam, like Vingroup, if you're a minute late, you lose your job. And, maybe we have to tell them, guess what? If if you don't make it to the 9 o'clock class before 9 o'clock, you get zeroed out, or it's an F for the day and it starts to count against you. How do you get them to become more professional in terms of, just even the lowest expectations of showing up on time?
Wow, that's a really interesting observation. I would say it's a mixed bag, right? I've experienced such, I would say, the lack of professionalism, right, in various contexts before. One possible, I would say, hypothesis, right, is that the students are very focused on the outcome, meaning things that contribute to their final grade or things that contribute to something that is more tangible. But when it does not count for anything, right, maybe the students are less incentivized to in a way, make sure they're punctual for class and things like that. But I would think making their attendance or their punctuality count for grades also defeats the purpose, right? Because I would say that is trying to tie an extrinsic motivator to something that should be very basic, right? Something that is observed in the workplace. So I would say it's a mindset kind of change that we require. I think is to tag this basic ethics and professionalism to part and parcel of doing a job well. And I would say this is part of the training that an educational institution should impart even before the students step in the workplace, right? Instead of something that is tied to a traditional metric like their grades on the report card or whether they can pass the course and things like that. And I think a lot of students, they perhaps don't appear on time because maybe they feel that the first few minutes of the class is something that maybe does not count for much, or it's not that important, right? So they think that they can take their time. And to be very honest, in my line of work, that is also a challenge that we face. I think there are a lot of basic ethics and professionalism, best practices that students are not aware of. And in that transition, they catch themselves very confused and also stepping across boundaries, right? Because they're not aware of some of these things. And I think as educators, it is our responsibility to also educate and try to change the mindset on that point. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a serial entrepreneur. And the other day I had a student question about why he got such a bad grade in his first assignment. And the first assignment was to come up with a business idea. So give me one sentence about what your idea is. Tell me who your target market is, and give me a third-party statistic that backs up why this problem should be solved. So that's it. That's all he had to do. And so he did not give it in one sentence. He didn't provide a third-party fact. And it wasn't clear that there was a real problem that he was solving here. And so he said, I needed more information, and I needed to be able to write it in more than one sentence. So I said, well, what we're training you for is that when you go out into the workforce, and we've had many entrepreneurs speak in class say these students write they don't know how to write concisely. So we're trying to make sure that you can write concisely. So if you can't explain what you want to solve in one sentence, you got to keep working on it until you can say it in one sentence, because your boss might tell you, you got 20 seconds to tell me what this is because I'm in a hurry here. And if you can't tell them in 20 seconds, then that's going to be a problem. Or a student will say to me, well, if I got assigned something the boss wanted us to do, let's say it's, develop software for, general practitioner doctors. I would ask him to give me all the research on that before I wrote the plan. I said, but there might not be any research. He's now telling you, I want to create software for general practitioners to monitor patients. That's all he's telling you, one sentence. Now you've got to go figure it out. So, what are you going to do? I said, because this is pretty much typical in the workforce, that your boss is going to give you minimal amount of information, and you're the one who has to do the heavy lifting, not him or her. So, so do you run training programs for students to kind of get them up to speed on how to carry themselves at work, what to say, especially soft skills? We always hear at our internships, the kids have great skills in computer programming or data analysis, whatever, but they need to improve on their soft skills. So how do you help them prepare them for this next journey?
Wonderful. Yeah. So a little bit of history of Skilio, we actually started off only focusing on soft skills because we feel like that was the most important part of how different employers make hiring and firing decisions. But at the same time, soft skills, right, are so difficult to teach. Right? They are very difficult to teach because we believe that soft skills should be learned by practice, by experiential learning. Right. So one of the ways that we do it, yes, it is a workshop. So we work with soft skill partners that come in to speak to students about how do they conduct themselves professionally, and how do they actually practice some of these good habits and behaviors, right, when they are doing an internship. And I would say the internship is a safer space to make mistakes because they are still in that transition from school to work. Right, so that's the first way. The second way that we help them, right, is to actually help them learn through practice, which is giving them the opportunity for an international career. Right, so students not just listen to theory on how they should practice it, but they go through a guided boot camp and they eventually do internships with our employer partners. And our employer partners are also carefully picked to be able to give students the right mentorship and give them the right feedback, right, if they are stepping over boundaries and they're doing something wrongly, right, in case they make the same mistakes again when they go into a full-time role. The third way that we are helping students develop some of these soft skills is to help them track it, right, to track it. So it's more of an analysis and an assessment tool where students, they actually are able to record down what are some of these different soft skills that we have exhibited over time, over their experiences. And we believe that the most basic unit of measurement for soft skills is behavior, right? Meaning, what are some of the things that they have done in the day-to-day, in their internship, in their project-based learning, right, in their community project. What are some of these micro actions, right, these behaviors that they have done to exhibit certain groups of skills? And what our system will do is to help them break it down, right, to understand that, okay, after you are exhibiting this certain behavior, these are the soft skills that you have exhibited, and subsequently give them room for or recommendations for improvement. Yeah, so I would say it's a multi-pronged approach, not just the tracking of it, but also a little bit of the theory, but most importantly, the application of it in real life situations.
How do you also get them used to not being spoon-fed information? Because it's another thing that we tackle here. And as I was kind of giving you an example of one of the students where they, I mean, literally, when we have them, I teach entrepreneurship. And so during the course of the semester, they have to develop a business plan for anything they like. And we not only have to provide a rubric for them, but I actually give them examples of what I want that section to look like, because we want to maximize their understanding of it. But even still, they're almost expecting you to tell them exactly what to write to do this. And how do you get them to, when they, especially going into a professional atmosphere where that's just not going to happen for them? How do you forewarn them about how they have to prepare themselves? And maybe you run also additional classes beyond what they get in universities to prepare them for this. So what do you do?
Yes, I would think the design thinking process is quite interesting for them to do that. And what I realized is after transiting into the workplace, most of the time your supervisor isn't able to give you examples or possible solutions, because this is probably a problem that hasn't surfaced before, and that's the reason why you are tasked to solve it, right? Because you are a valuable team member and you are supposed to get to that point, but nobody knows how to get to that point yet. Yeah, so I think that's how we run our team, and also how we guide our students to go through this whole process, is to tell them what is the eventual outcome of that problem statement, but how you get there, right? You should go through processes of design thinking, right? Being able to come up with different hypotheses and being able to suggest to your team, how are you going to, I would say, validate or invalidate, right, some of those assumptions, or how you're able to propose or ask good questions, right, so that you're able to get closer to what you should do. Yeah, because especially, right, I think back to the first question on the whole education system and how students are being taught to go through the process in ASEAN. I think there are a lot of ways and a lot of fixed ways, right, and fixed methodologies that if you follow, you will get the answer. Right? But that's not the case, and how the world will become, or how the world is already right now, and being able to shift their mindset to more of a experimentation focused mindset, to one that from one that is failure averse, right? And what I like to tell our students as well is, it is not about not making mistakes at all, but it's more of how are you able to make the most number of mistakes in the shortest amount of time. Right? So you have this amount of time, how are you able to try as many ways as you can to get to the answer. Right? Any questions, ask good questions, reach out to your right audience or your customers to get closer to that eventual outcome.
How did you come up with this idea? And I know you have a co-founder as well. And what's the co-founder's background?
Yeah, so I actually have two co-founders. So one of my co-founder is also working with me on the whole program front, and working with the industry to also understand, right, what the industry needs are, so that we can align what we have on our student programs front to help them with the transition. Yeah, so both of us are actually in, I would say, the youth development space before we started this. So we are working on site with tertiary institutions in Singapore to do like coaching, mentoring, leadership, soft skill programs for students. My other co-founder is more on the technical side. He does get involved in some of the educational programs as well, but it's more inclined towards software development and building up our infrastructure for our tech product. Yeah, so I would say our skill sets are very complementary, but our vision, right, for building a more holistic and developed younger generation, I think that is where we align and we started this together. Yeah.
How long have you been in business now?
5 years? 5 years now.
And so what's it like being in partnership with not just one partner, but two partners? So what's the pluses of being in partnership with two other people? And what are some of the challenges?
Yes, I would say there are a lot more benefits than challenges. Maybe you can start with that first and how we navigate the challenges. I would say forming a team was a challenge on its own, because we are very complementary people, which means we are also very different, right? The way we think, be someone, for me, I'm a very realistic, pragmatic person, right? And I have co-founders who are extremely optimistic, and a co-founder who is extremely pessimistic as well, right? And because of that, the way we make certain decisions can conflict, right? But I would say we are all the challenge is the conflict, but I would say how we come to the our common consensus, our common ground based on that vision is something that we have learned along the way. Yeah, so that has been something for myself, also a soft skill that we have learned also. I would say that the second thing is also being able to be very vulnerable and understand each other's needs along the way, right? Because we've been doing this for a while, and ourselves, right, we have transited from school to work, running this. So we started this in school, and now we are doing it full time, as full time as graduates from college. So it has been also something that we had to navigate together, because all of us have very different priorities, or what we want for the business might be quite different at different stages as well. So being able to communicate that well and trying to understand from each other's perspectives was something that we had to work out as well. Yeah, but I think slowly after working on this for a while, we do see eye on eye, right, on the problem that we are solving, which is why we come back to that every time we have a disagreement, and that helps us also at least reach. I would say it may not be a common solution or agreed upon solution, but we do know that we all have the companies and the problems interest in mind when making decisions. Yes.
So how do you market your organization? Because you're not just marketing to people in Singapore, you're doing it throughout Southeast Asia. So how do you go about building your visibility? I mean, you've already been around for 5 years, so you're already enjoying success. How do you get not only people to know who you are, and but also people to keep coming back and utilizing you?
Yeah, so back few years ago, when we were only in Singapore, right? Nobody outside Singapore knew about us. Our go-to market was really to be on the ground, right? So we flew a lot. We actually walked into like universities, spoke to career office staff. We actually met students there, for example, in Vietnam at cafes. We just reached out to them, right? Without a fear of being rejected or them feeling that why are we doing a very out of the blue approach. But I think that helped us also understand the problem a little bit more before we even marketed what we had, right? So I think that was our approach. Now, right, we do have, I would say, a good sizable community around the area, and when we do good work, I think we trust that people will also share with other people about what we are doing. What has helped a lot as well is we do reciprocal exchanges, right, between Singapore students and students in ASEAN, right? So that has also been a quite effective go-to-market strategy. So, for example, in Singapore, the government is very keen to send our local students to Vietnam, for example, to see how life is like there, right? How the industry is like there, how the students are like there. And we have also organized various exchange programs to facilitate meaningful interactions, cross-border interactions between different countries within the region, right? And when students in Vietnam, for example, hear about what we do, they're naturally keen to also take up more international opportunities with us. So I'd say as a very small company, it's about also trying to kill many birds with one stone, and tackling it from bottom up. So understanding the problem first, being on the ground, being very high touch point with our clients. And every time when we go overseas, we still catch up with our first few users who have believed in us till the very, from the very first day. And that has helped us to also maintain good relationships and have these students to come back over time, over many years as well. Yes.
Are either of your mother or father entrepreneurs?
They're not actually. Yeah, and I didn't think that I would be one actually as well. Back in university when I was starting out to figure out what I wanted in a career, I thought that I would be a teacher, right, or an educator, or somebody in the human resource department in a firm. But when this opportunity came by, when I spoke about this idea with my co-founders, I thought, why not? Right? There's so much time in university to try out something new. And it very well aligns with what I want to do in a career, just that it is a business, right? So we got at it, and somehow there was some traction, which is why we decided to continue working on it after university.
What do you like most about being an entrepreneur, and what's the biggest challenge to being an entrepreneur?
Yes, I think for the biggest, I would say the biggest challenge first, right? The biggest challenge is that there is no fixed job scope or things that you should do every day. You really define your own success. You really decide what you should do in a day, and that takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of intentionality, but at the same time, it does also it's a double-edged sword, right? If you are lost and you don't know where you're heading to, it could be very lonely as well. Yeah, so I would say that's a challenge. And that was even tougher, right, when we were still students and taking up classes at the same time, and running a venture at the same time. Yeah, but I would say the good thing is that on the flip side, you really have a lot of control over your successes, and that's what we choose to believe, right? Our locus of control ourselves. Any problem can be solved. That also gives us a good chance to learn. It also gives us a good chance to learn. It's either you learn or you celebrate some small wins. That's how we choose to see it. And even us, because we are, in a way, quite fresh out into the workforce as young people. And I would say this opportunity for me, at least, has been one that helped me develop skills in my own job. Right? I think that's really cool because we are practicing what we are preaching. And yeah, that is something that benefits us as well. We are learning every day. Yeah, so I would say all of us are enjoying this journey thus far. And because there's so much to learn, we are still looking forward to it every day.
Do you have a mentor yourself?
I do have a few mentors here and there, right? Some of the mentors.
How valuable is having a mentor?
Yeah, I think it's good to have mentors that guide you along the way, right? To be very honest, my mentors from different different channels or different organizations, they all have very different professions. So not all of them are actually entrepreneurs, right? Some of them are human resource staff. Some of them are educators in universities. We do have mentors that actually support me and my founders as well. In the accelerators that we have joined. And I think mentors are not there to tell you the answer, right? Like how it's not about them telling you, okay, you should try these 5 things to reach your key performance indicators by the end of the month. But I realized that was never the case. What they can help us with, I think it's more of giving us options on what we can try, which might not work, right? But also keeping us accountable for our own personal goals. Yeah, so what I felt was the biggest advantage of having a mentor, right, is to hear from someone who is really a lot more experienced and someone who keeps you in check for not just your company's goals, but your personal goals, right? How can you align that to the problem you have identified in your venture? And how can that help you get you closer to your personal goals as well? And that has always been very refreshing and very timely reminders for me every time I see them. And I think for myself, right, because I'm also someone who is very involved in the youth development space, I do want in the future to be mentors for my younger juniors as well, right? And I think I do think that is something that I should pass it on and continue helping more young people out there.
Did you raise capital for this business, or you, the three of you, self-funded this?
Yeah, so we are bootstrapped to this day, right? And what we are doing right now, it is I think we have found like a recurring business model, which allows us to fund it, right, with our revenue. So if you would ask, right, whether we were to raise funds in the future, that is also an option, right? But I think we have learned a lot trying to build up a recurring business model for what we are doing, and yes, we were open to see what other doors will open in the next coming years.
Women entrepreneurs seem to really thrive in Asia and in particular Vietnam. I mean, unlike in the United States where women are making great strides and gains in there, women still talk about glass ceilings, but at least here in Vietnam, I don't hear anything about glass ceilings. It is so common to see women entrepreneurs. I've been at events where 80% of the CEOs are women.
Wow.
Why in Asia, and I think that's not so uncommon aside from Vietnam, but also in Singapore. Why do you think, and when I talk to women here, they said, I don't see any glass ceiling. I mean, if I want to start it, I'm good. If I wanted to raise money, men aren't blinking about putting money in if I need it. Well, why do you think things have really taken off for women in Asia?
Yeah, I think there are many, many reasons. One very big reason I feel is that women are forming many support groups among themselves to share knowledge and to be more confident, right, of our capabilities in doing everything. I think not just entrepreneurship, but anything in general, right, to achieving anything. And I think that's really empowering. To be honest, a lot of times I feel that some of these glass ceilings are also self-perceived. Right? I think it's the lack of confidence to pursue certain achievements or to try for a higher rank, right, or to lead a team. But we do have the capabilities to do so, right? And we are realizing that, right, which is why we do have many support groups for knowledge sharing and best practices to move forward. And from there, right, I think a lot of the other stakeholders are seeing that, and they are also gaining confidence, right, when there are small wins coming up. Yeah, myself, I had a very pleasant experience. Right? I wouldn't say it's the same for everyone, but with younger girls being able to achieve success, I think on the topic of mentorship, that also helps these girls to mentor even younger ones, right, to achieve success likewise. And I think that is really great, right? I think that we have shown so much progress in this area. And I'm very heartened to see that we have very, very diverse teams, inclusive teams in the region also.
How do you handle stress? Because I know myself, I've done 28 ventures, and I love it. And I go to get up at 5:30 a.m. I go to sleep between 12:30 and 1. But I never feel tired at all. I guess because the work is so interesting. But I do find that if I don't take off a day, and I take off Saturdays, then it's eventually going to get to me. So how do you get some work-life balance, and how do you handle the stress?
Yeah, I think for me, the first thing is that sleep is so important for me. Sleep, having enough sleep, and that gives you the mood and the energy to take on the next day, coupled with exercise, right? So I think these two things are things that I've learned to prioritize over time. The second thing is learning how to say no, right? Being able to reject certain opportunities that may come by, being able to be more intentional and prioritize things that help you or your business get in the right direction that you want to get to. That's the second one. I think the third one, which is something that I'm still learning to practice, right, is to have that locus of control, right? Because I think a lot of times, a lot of entrepreneurs or people get really stressed out because they feel that a lot of things in the environment are beyond their control, right? They think that they can't solve this problem. They think that the odds are stacked against them. Many things don't go their way, right? By being able to try to understand that, you know, you are in control and you are able to solve or manage any obstacle that comes your way. That's something that helps me also manage my emotions. And yeah, having a very good support system to teach you that the right people to encourage you along the way, especially in entrepreneurship, right? I think it's a really lonely journey. Helps you to build that confidence, that locus of control. And I think that can be managed to achieve a more balanced, holistic, and a lifestyle that I would say is not free of stress, but it has the right amount of stress, right, for you to excel and do well.
And so are there any books, podcasts, magazines that you read that improve your education on being a business owner and entrepreneur?
Yes, I'm a psychology student, so I actually really love personal development books. Right, one of my favorite authors, Adam Grant. I've read all of his books, right, and I think his snippets of wisdom are very actionable, right. So I think one practice that I consciously do is after every book, I will write down 5 to 10 things that I have learned and things that I want to apply within the next month of reading the book, right? Because I think a lot of times we read and forget, or we don't actually apply. And that's something that I encourage the students that we help to do as well, to not just learn on theory, but to apply it. And I think that's how it sticks with you, how it becomes a good habit, and it's something you can practice over time.
Well, I have to tell you, so impressed with what you've learned and what you've done in your company and the things that you're doing that are going to make a difference, not just for your clients, but all of Asia. It's been a pleasure interviewing you, and I'm hoping that we will bring you back again as we continue to follow your story.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marc, for having me as well.
Thank you again. We wish you the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marc.